Most people overthink 95% of their decisions. Meanwhile, successful CEOs can make lots of high quality decisions really fast. It got me thinking, what are they doing differently that helps them decide so quickly? The answer is actually pretty simple. It starts with understanding that not all decisions are created equal. There are different types of decisions, and each one should be made at a different speed, on purpose. Part 1, the two-way door framework. I used to think the best way to handle important decisions was with perfect planning and analysis, but I was dead wrong. That mindset made me place equal value on almost every decision, which made me waste hours overthinking decisions that should have taken minutes. Turns out there's a much better way to approach decision making. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, has a super helpful way of thinking about this. It's called the two-way door framework, and here's how it works. According to Bezos, there are two types of decisions: one-way doors and two-way doors. One-way door decisions are really hard to reverse. The door only swings one way. Let's say you walk through the door and realize it was the wrong choice. It's tough, sometimes even impossible, to get back to where you started. On the other hand, two-way door decisions are easy to reverse. The door swings both ways, so if you don't like what's on the other side, you can go back with just a little effort. So here's what Jeff Bezos suggests. Every time you need to make a decision, start by making a more important one first. Decide whether it's a one-way door or a two-way door. Once you know which type it is, take a different approach. If it's a two-way door, move fast. Make the decision quickly with the information you have and be ready to adjust as you go. If it's a one-way door, slow down and think it through. Gather the information you need and explore different options and possible outcomes. You want to keep that door open as long as you can, because once you commit, you're all in. Now, this idea of matching decision type with decision speed might sound pretty obvious. You might even think, isn't that just common sense? And sure, it kind of is. But like most things, execution is everything. Part 2, the hidden trap. It's usually easy to spot one-way door decisions. Big moves like changing careers, moving to a new country, or selling your business. The real challenge starts with two-way doors. This is where overthinking sneaks in. We start treating reversible decisions like they're irreversible. We confuse two-way doors for one-way doors and end up spending way too much time debating and procrastinating. If you've ever worked in an office job, you've probably sat through a multi-hour meeting about something utterly minor that could have been solved with a quick email, or maybe you've spent days going back and forth on whether to start a side project, apply for a new job, or change your LinkedIn profile picture. These are all clearly two-way door decisions that should be made quickly, and deep down, we usually know that. But some decisions are harder to spot as two-way doors. A common example is choosing a name or logo when starting a new business. The same goes for side projects like a blog or a YouTube channel. A lot of people stress over it, thinking the decision is permanent once it's out there. I've done the same, spending too much time debating names and profile pictures before launching this channel. Looking back, I wasted a lot of time because I was scared to put something out there that might not work. The smarter move would have been to just pick the best option for now and keep going, because you can always change it later. A lot of successful companies have done this. Backrub became Google, Phoenix became Firefox, and there are plenty more. Now that you see how easy it is to fall into the trap of treating two-way doors like one-way doors, let me share a few things that help me put the two-way door framework into action. Part 3. The truth about 95% of your decisions. The first thing to realize is that about 95% of decisions, in business and in life, are actually two-way doors. They're reversible. Sure, you might need to get a little creative to walk back through the door, but most things aren't set in stone. Only around 5% of decisions are truly irreversible. With this in mind, here's an easy way to picture it. One-way doors are the decisions that set your path. Two-way doors shape your journey, like stepping stones along the way. For example, choosing a career might define your general path, but deciding which project to work on next is part of the journey. Most of the decisions we face every day are those stepping stones. The problem is, most people spend way too much time analyzing each stepping stone, trying to plan the perfect route. But that leads to two big issues. First, you waste time and energy overthinking reversible decisions, which leaves less room for the irreversible ones. Second, the world moves fast. Everything is changing all the time. In this kind of environment, action beats perfection. Even if your first step isn't perfect, it gives you something better than any plan ever could: real feedback. It helps you learn what works and what doesn't. So even the wrong decision moves you forward because it rules out one option and points you toward a better one. Here's something else that's really important to understand. Taking too long to make a reversible decision can cost you just as much as making an irreversible one. Think about that job you were thinking of applying for, but you waited 2 days and the posting closed. That's a classic example of an opportunity lost to hesitation. That's why, when a decision is reversible, it's almost always smarter to act quickly and adjust as you go, instead of trying to get it perfect. So, in our busy everyday lives, it's worth remembering that most decisions are reversible. They're two-way doors, just stepping stones. Reminding yourself of that when you start overthinking gives you a sense of freedom. And when you realize that in most cases action beats perfection, it becomes easier to decide and move forward, even when you don't feel ready. All right, let's move on to the next thing that helped me use the two-way door framework. Part 4. Hats, haircuts, and tattoos. Moving fast on most decisions is a great rule of thumb. But since life is messy, we can't always move at the same speed on every two-way door decision. That's why it helps to see decisions on a spectrum. The further along the spectrum you go, the harder and more expensive it gets to undo the decision. So it makes sense to slow down. When figuring out how reversible something is, think about how difficult it would be to take it back. The more it costs to reverse, the more carefully it should be made. There's actually a decision matrix that maps all of this and shows what strategy to use based on where the decision falls. It's helpful and definitely worth exploring. But when I'm under pressure, I found it more useful and more intuitive to think about decisions the way James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, does. He breaks them into 3 categories: hats, haircuts, and tattoos. Most decisions, he says, are like hats. You try one on, and if it doesn't fit, no big deal. Just take it off and try another. The cost of getting it wrong is low, so you can move fast and test a bunch. Some decisions are like haircuts. A bad one might feel uncomfortable. You might regret it for a while, but it grows out. Soon enough, no one notices, and things go back to normal. Then there are a few decisions that are like tattoos. You live with them for a long time. Even years later, that choice still leaves a mark. Technically, you can remove a tattoo, but it's painful and expensive. Same with these decisions. They're not impossible to reverse, but the cost is high. So here's how I approach decisions. If it's a hat, I decide on the spot with whatever information I have. If it's a haircut, I set a short deadline and do some quick research. And if it's a tattoo, I slow down, gather more info, and think carefully through the options. In general, for hat and haircut decisions, the key is action over perfection. Don't overthink it. Tattoo-level decisions are trickier. The real question becomes how long to wait before making a move. In those moments, I think about whether the time I'm spending deciding is worth it. If not, I decide and move on. I ask myself if the consequences of being wrong are manageable. If they are, I make the call and adjust later if needed. And if more information won't lead to a much better answer, or if waiting might just make me miss the opportunity, then it's probably time to act. Jeff Bezos once said that if you have about 70% of the information, that's often enough to make the call. Personally, I've found that thinking about decisions in those 3 ways helps me make them faster without freaking out. Now let's move to the final part, making irreversible decisions more reversible. One-way door decisions often feel like all or nothing. We either quit or stay forever. That kind of black and white thinking can make us feel stuck. But the truth is, there's usually a range of options in between, most of them more reversible and far less risky than we think. Take quitting your job. It doesn't have to be a big leap. You could switch roles, change teams, or go part-time. Each step moves you closer to change, but with more flexibility and less risk. That's the key. Big decisions become more manageable when you break them down. So instead of treating it like one massive move, think about how you can break it into smaller, safer steps. Think about how you can turn one big one-way door into a few two-way doors. When the risk feels smaller, it's easier to stop overthinking and actually take action.